And welcome to the Friendmue Podcast. We have a very special guest today who continues to travel all over the world, promoting and covering some of the most high-profile conventions and topics of the gaming industry, not to mention getting to work with Sega to help promote the Shenmue 1 and 2 re-releases, and even play Shenmue 3 with Yu Suzuki himself, the highly esteemed and very famous nerd, Adam Koralik. Thanks for being on the show.
Dude, you way oversold me there, but thank you. That's very nice of you.
Don't
worry, I'll send you the $20 I promised you before the show now. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, see, you're very humble. That's what I like about you. And you know, I do think I've watched you for a long time. I'm a big fan of your channel, and your conversational skills are very impressive. I'm someone who grew up with a lot of social anxiety, and so when I see you in some of your videos where you're talking about, hey, oh yeah, I went to E3, talked to these strangers, and sweet talked my way into Yu Suzuki, and then Yu Suzuki wasn't uncomfortable with me, and he came and said hi to me. I'm just like, wow. Social skills, 10 out of 10. Nice, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that came from. I don't know how that happened, but thank you. I appreciate that. Because I was a lot like that, too. Like, I didn't talk to anybody. I had social anxiety as well. And then it was like some point in college, it just like turned on. It's like, all right, cool. I can make that work.
Yeah, you got comfortable with yourself a little more. That's good. It's good to hear. It gives people hope. So I want to talk a little bit about how I first found your channel. I've watched your stuff quite a bit. Some of my favorite stuff of yours would be your console generation recaps.
Thank you.
I really like the Keep Dreaming series because I'm a big fan of the Dreamcast. And of course, anything Shenmue related at all, I hunger for that desperately. So I used to Google Shenmue every single day for years. I went to Sweden in 2006. I played Shenmue 2 on the Xbox, on the original Xbox, and then I thought, okay, when's Shenmue 3? And it just didn't come, and it didn't come. Then I went to Sweden in 2006, stayed there until 2008, and came back. And I thought, yeah, I bet by the time I'm back, Shenmue 3 will be around. And it wasn't. And I was going, oh man, where is it? And I would Google stuff. Then this thing called YouTube came up, and I started thinking, hey, maybe there's Shenmue stuff on YouTube. And all I could find at the time were, I think, some Let's Plays of a guy named Scottish Duck.
Oh, I remember him.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. I've talked to him on my streams a couple of times. He's a funny guy. There was also a video, it was like a mod where it was that scene in Shenmue 1 with Nozomi and Ryo, and they're having that fateful encounter where Nozomi's trying to tell her feelings for Ryo, and he's just not receptive to it. But instead of Nozomi, it's Lan Di.
Yeah,
and somebody just...
he's resting on her, on the shoulder and stuff. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, you never got to avenge your father and kill me, Ryo. It's so sad. And he like lays on his shoulder. I can't find that video anywhere. I've looked for years.
I know what you're talking about, though. I do remember that. That was a thing.
I love that video.
Yeah. It was.
Hey, if anybody knows, link it, please. Yeah, so I'm glad you know about that. And then after I found that video, I started finding your channel, and you were talking about how, well, if Shenmue 3 is going to make sense to become a reality, it'll be on PlayStation 4. And I thought, oh, cool, this guy must have some insider information, which you really didn't.
No, I was just what I always say is I was following the money. Like, just follow the money. That's what will happen. And I called it 2 years in advance.
See, but you had such a good nose for it, and now, years later, you are actually an industry insider to a degree, well, at least to the point where you have to sign NDAs and things like that.
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah, so it sort of went full circle. It's kind of funny.
Well, I never really thought about it that way, but thank you.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So, and that makes it a bit surreal for me to be having this podcast with you and talking to you, but, you know, that's come full circle as well. Years later, here I am talking with Adam Koralik, so it's a good deal. I appreciate all the stuff you've done for Shenmue, helping to bring it to pass. It was actually because of you that I joined the 500K and learned about it. Joined that group, had a great time finding all these people to connect with. I'm actually originally from Wyoming, and so...
you're one of the illustrious 500,000. Right on.
Yeah. I thought you were just going to say 5.
No, but no, the actual population. It's rare to meet someone from Wyoming. That's cool.
It's quite rare. Yeah, you got to collect them all. So my brother and I seemed like we were the only people in the whole state that had a Dreamcast, had a Sega Saturn, and loved Shenmue. I could never find anybody else who liked Shenmue. And so when I found your channel and found out about the 500K, I was just on cloud nine. I found all these people who liked Shenmue, and it was great. It felt great. And then Shenmue 3 happened, and I totally freaked out. And so here we are. It's great. And so Shenmue's had a huge impact in my life. And one of the things that really resonated with me in one of your videos, it was fairly recently, you mentioned that Shenmue needs to exist. It can't die. It shouldn't die. We shouldn't let it die because it has cultural significance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wondered if you could further elaborate on what you mean by that.
Okay, so I assume you're talking about some of the podcasts I did. I feel that Shenmue, I mean, I love it as a game. I love it as a franchise. I love it as a story in of itself. But the thing that the reason I don't want it to die, the reason I think it has cultural significance is the story behind it, the production of it, the making of it. And the fact that, I mean, in any other medium, if a franchise had, let's just call it what it is, had tanked as badly as Shenmue did, you would never see it again. It would never happen. Corporations operate on money, and they're going to follow the money. There is no money to be made in Shenmue. At least there wasn't for the longest time. And Shenmue 3 is proof that a strong fan base with enough willpower, enough desire, enough heart can convince and resurrect a franchise like that. And it's that story. If it had been a different IP that had done it, I'd be saying the same thing. Like if, let's just say hypothetically, Ninja Turtles had been dead for 20 years and that fan base sat around and said, we want more Ninja Turtles. And they made it happen the same way when the odds of it happening were so low, that would be culturally significant. And that's what I mean by that. Shenmue did that in a way that I don't think any other franchise ever did. Franchises come back from time to time. They get their reboots. But usually to mine for, successful franchises, like say RoboCop was successful and then they got a reboot that was unsuccessful. But it would be like taking some obscure thing that was like a big movie. I'm trying to think of like a good example of this, like a big blockbuster movie that was like well liked but never had. There was. All right, do you remember this movie called Titan AE? Came out in 2000.
Yes.
Okay, so that was a
Totally.
huge, big budget animated movie. It was supposed to be this big deal. It was supposed to be amazing. It actually is a really good movie, but it bombed. It bombed like crazy, and you'll never see a sequel to it. But imagine if there'd been this devout fan base, of which I'm actually one of. I really like that movie. But this devout fan base that stuck around and was just constantly trying to push for a new one. And they eventually convinced Don Bluth and all the others like around that property, at Fox, now Disney, I guess, to resurrect and make a Titan AE 2. That would be unprecedented in film history, to be able to take a blockbuster that failed and did that. We essentially did exactly that with a video game franchise. It should never have worked, but it did.
Yeah, I could see what you mean.
So that's
you
what I
definitely
meant
have
by,
a type,
yeah,
don't you?
That's what I meant by culturally significant.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you definitely have a type, don't you? You really like these tragic, high quality gems that kind of fail.
Oh, I love
but
plenty
didn't
of things
deserve
that
to
didn't fail. It's just that
That's good.
there's a good, fight in the ones that did.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely a good fight in those. I think that now that you've elaborated on that, your explanation is a little bit different than what I expected you to say, so that was really interesting for me. I think that everything you said has merit. I also think that there's another direction that you can take that argument with as far as the cultural significance goes. There's another layer, at least, and that's the fact that how should I say this? Okay, the best way to put it is Shenmue is a very polarizing game. You either hate it or you love it so much that it changes your life. I've never met a person that didn't feel strongly about this game.
Well, I'll give you, there's 3 categories, and the most common one, sadly, is I've never heard of that. But, referring to Shenmue. But then you're right. If they've heard of it, there's either I hated that game, it was a terrible forklift simulator, I don't understand, or my life changed and evolved because of that game. Much like people do with Star Wars, but just not on the same level of success.
Completely. The experience is almost like a coming-of-age story that really resonates with people, and it sticks with them. They remember it. It imprints on them. And yeah, for those who have heard of it, they would fall into those 2 categories. You're right. There are a lot of criticisms for the series. As YouTube became more prominent and people started covering video games more, I started thinking, all right, great, now they're going to have some Shenmue videos come out. They're going to cover Shenmue. And then a lot of the Shenmue videos were very negative. It was about, oh, I played Shenmue, I didn't like it. It wasn't very good. Like, reaction after reaction that I would see of these big YouTubers was usually not favorable. They would usually come to the conclusion that, oh yeah, it just didn't age well. It wasn't really that good at the time. You know, you've got your Jeff Gersmans and people like that as well. And I want to know some reasons why you think Shenmue is a great game, because I think that that's part of what makes it culturally significant as well, is that its quality is so high.
Well, obviously, it's innovative in all the things it did in the time it was around, but it also remains the best as far as detail in like an open genre or open world context. So the argument I've always heard, and I agree with completely, is that games like GTA or Watch Dogs or whatever, they're infinitely bigger than Shenmue is ever going to be, but they're big to the point of being almost illogical. You know, like, it's such a big map, you can't really do anything. You essentially drive a car to places and just do the same stuff of blowing stuff up over and over, and that could be fun. It's what I like to think of as like quick fix entertainment. You know, you just kind of get the short burst of entertainment. Oh, I shot the guy and then I ran away. Like, that's fine. Shenmue gives you a big world, admittedly not as big, but a much more detailed world that allows you to do pretty much anything. You want to go over and pick up that cup and look at it, you can do that. You want to go over and pick up that orange and look at it, you can do that. You want to feed that cat, you can do that. Now, to most people, that doesn't sound very interesting, but that's the genius of it, is that it just immerses you into its world. It gets to the point where you become a part of that reality if you play it enough and you enjoy it enough, which is why it connects with so many people, I think, to really have been so personally touched by it, where it's such a significant part of their lives, because they feel like this is the life. Like, this is this guy's life, and I'm sharing his life with him. I'm not just running around shooting at stuff. Like, nobody feels that way about GTA 5. They may have way more fun in the short term or whatever, but it's not going to connect with you. You're not going to resonate and remember all the stories and remember all the characters and remember everything you did. Whereas Shenmue does that to you because it just connects to your soul if you give it that chance. Now, that's the problem, though, is that most people never do that part. If they even try the game, in our modern era, a lot of people perceive the game as simply too slow and uninteresting, because that's an unfortunate requirement of the game. It demands your patience in a way that most people are never willing to give it. And even I, who have played it a million times, and I know I've seen plenty of other devout fans in the Shenmue 500K and so on and so forth, even all of us will admit Shenmue 1 in particular is slower than it needs to be, because there's certain things that only occur at certain times, and then you're left to kind of just wander the streets, which, if you've played it before, you're like, there's only so many times I want to do the capsule toy thing. There's only so many times I want to play Hang On. That's why Shenmue 2, in my opinion, is the better game, because at least it does have some time skip options to alleviate that problem.
Ooh, okay.
We'll talk about it.
I'll let you have that.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
But I personally I love the game for that reason, because it totally engrosses you into its story if you give it the chance to do that. But not everybody can or will.
That's true. It is very uniquely immersive, I think. But a lot of people kind of have a reply to that, and they'll say, well, yeah, but it's mundane for its own sake. And it shouldn't be, a fun game shouldn't be purposely boring, you know, and things like that. I've even heard some high up, prominent game reviewers from places such as IGN and GameSpot and stuff, they'll say, oh, I think a game shouldn't be a medium for storytelling. A good game shouldn't be focused on storytelling. So if you have a game that's about the story too much, it won't be a good game. It's more about the gameplay. And I just think that's a very narrow view. And I think Shenmue transcends that, and it kind of challenges the notion of what a game can be and do. I think that the mundanity of Shenmue is deceptive, because you can actually find in those slow moments, you find a lot of very accurate cultural idiosyncrasies. Like, for example, when Ryo is walking towards Sakuragaoka, and some little Chinese kids are playing, well, at least one of them's Chinese anyway, they're playing soccer, and they kick the ball at Ryo, and you have to do the quick time event, and you got to catch it, right?
Yep.
And then you're going, oh, okay, well, soccer, whatever. But then you're walking, and you meet a guy in Dabuita who owns a sporting goods store. and he's complaining about how, oh man, kids these days, they don't play baseball, they only want to play soccer. And you go, oh yeah, I did see some kids playing soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, you kick a soccer ball into a bad guy's face and save that kid, you know? And it's brilliant. It takes these real cultural Japanese historical things and weaves it so seamlessly into the narrative that it's really impressive. And not only that, but I really feel that you get out of Shenmue what you put into it. Because there are, especially, and we can talk about this more a little bit later, but if you're a fan of the Virtua Fighter series, there are callbacks and Easter eggs all over the place for fans of Virtua Fighter in the Shenmue games. And if you appreciate Virtua Fighter, it makes you appreciate Shenmue that much more. And so it's really more about, like, what is just around the corner that is special in this game? What's there to hint at something more? And I think that, like, for example, people say, oh, all you do is stand around and wait for a shop to open, and you can talk to people, but it doesn't really do anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if people were playing this, I'm going to hold up the Shenmue 1 and 2 re-release for the Xbox One here. If people played this version of it, which I do like this version, it's got its problems, but I think they would have a point. But if you played Shenmue 1, how it was originally intended, you would have the passport disc. And correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but I think that if you talk to somebody in Shenmue and you save your game, then a little bio shows up in the passport disc with a backstory of that person.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure because I never really got to use the passport disc when it was functional.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise
a lot of people
me,
didn't.
though. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, though, because according to Corey Marshall, and he told me this, he showed me this, or he didn't. He told me this in description. Sega wrote giant bios for every NPC in the game, including down to, like, what their blood type was. Like, it has everything.
Yeah.
So it would not at all surprise me if that same thing had been digitized and put into the game somewhere, at least on the passport disc. That would not at all surprise me.
Well, that's where those bios come from.
Exactly.
In the Prima official strategy guide. It comes from the passport disc. And so every time you do something, every time you talk to someone, even if it seems insignificant, it actually is a puzzle piece into the lore of that world, and it's really important. Like, for example, the lady who is the fortune teller in Dabuita,
Mm-hmm.
you talk to her, you look in the passport disc, you look at her bio, you find out she's just some chick that inherited her parents' convenience store shop, and she reworked it into a fortune teller shop. And so
hilarious.
people kind of people gossip about her. But the thing is, she's the real deal. Like, her soothsaying actually works. So it's like, what the heck? Like, but it's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like little nuggets like that. It's not mundane for its own sake. It's teasing out these details that really flesh out the world and make it very unique. So to me, its cultural significance is the fact that I think it's truly an art. I think Shenmue is a very artistic game, and it is high art because of the way it represents Japanese culture in the time and place that it's set in.
And I agree with you completely, and I think we're basically hitting on the same point about immersion. Because all of those little details have no purpose for the player, but if anybody takes the time, they'll realize how much deeper and richer it is. And yes, there is, of course, the argument, and I would agree with it, about it being art. And one might argue that we might sound eccentric when we say something like this, but maybe it will be revered alongside something like the Mona Lisa down the road. That's probably very extreme. But in that sense of cultural significance for a piece of art, I can see that. But while I agree, that wasn't actually the argument I was making. I was talking more about the cultural impact of what it did to resurrect something, as we discussed earlier.
Right, yeah, and that's what I was saying. I was, the way that Shenmue is culturally relevant to me, the reason I think it's culturally relevant were for the reasons I laid out there, but you had a different take on it, but I think they're both equally valid. So with both those arguments together, I think you can make a very strong case for it. So I just, oh man, such a great game. You can just,
but the problem it has, and it will always have, Shenmue 3 included, and it always had from day one, was how to present it to people. Because even now, even after the game's been out for 20 years, and you have guys like us who are very familiar with the game, how do you show it to people? It's almost impossible, because the only way anybody can really enjoy that game is if they play it by themselves and they give it enough of a chance. Like, if you try to watch a YouTube stream of that game, even knowing it well, you'll be like, like this is not really something you want to watch other people play. And it's not really something you want people to watch you play, because the whole idea is to just take your time and just immerse yourself into that world. Because if you have too many other cooks in the kitchen or voices around you, what have you, it kind of takes away from it, and it no longer becomes the art. It becomes like the Godzilla dub movie, and it's not really fun. It's not the same experience. That is always the problem Shenmue has had, is how do you present this game to people? And they're still running into it with Shenmue 3, which, by the way, is one of the reasons I'm very confident that Shenmue 3 will be good, because they don't know how to present it to people. It just follows the tradition. That's why all the trailers have mostly been the story, and you only seen a handful of like gameplay until E3 anyway. Because, again, the gameplay is much... This sounds ironic, and you kind of hit on it before. Shenmue is not a game that was sold on its gameplay, as strange as that sounds. It was sold on the strength of its story. Now, the story can only be fully executed through the gameplay, which, does require that patience that we keep talking about. But if you were going to just watch clips of stuff in Shenmue, it's a lot of walking, it's capsule toys, it's playing hang-on, it's working out, it's stuff that you can't really do much with as far as like video content is concerned. And it's the same thing with Shenmue 3, I'm sure. Having played a section of it, and it sounds like you want to talk about that later maybe, it's a lot of mini games and stuff, and that's, to the modern gamer, is like, why do I want to watch a guy play a turtle race? But that's well, but that's not the point. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, it's not the point. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off or anything. I was just going to say, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people who, because I think the problem is mainstream appeal. But Correct. There is a niche audience that does enjoy watching Let's Plays of Shenmue, and there's a lot of people who watch Animal Crossing, for example, that they just like to sit and get comfy and cozy and soak in that kind of chill vibe and the slow pace of those kind of games and just hang out with each other and enjoy each other's company. There is a community around that, and I've actually hosted a lot of Let's Plays of Shenmue, and a lot of people really do enjoy it. It's pretty fun.
And
because they can say, hey, go over there and do this thing. And you go, oh, I've never done that. And you do it, and everyone goes, LOL, because, you saw something crazy that you've never seen before. Some guy with weird snaggly teeth or whatever. So. And
I agree completely, and that's also why I often go to the Shenmue Dojo streams that they do, that Peter hosts every once in a while. But don't forget, that's an argument for fans. That's not an argument for an investor, for a major company that, as we said, you got to follow the money. So that's why when they make commercials about the game, they don't know how to present it to people. And that's why I don't know if you want me to tell this story, but
tell it. Yeah.
So you ever see that first Shenmue trailer for the Dreamcast where this guy wakes up and he's like, Nozomi, and then his girlfriend slaps him and is just like, why?
Who's Nozomi?
So you know that trailer. You remember that?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
2 years ago, or not this year, but the year before, I went to E3 and I was making this video with Corey and Liesel, where Corey walked around and asked people questions as Rio around the Sega booth, just seeing who would get the joke and whatever. We made a video out of it. As we're filming, I have this Shenmue shirt on, and we finished a shot, and this like older gentleman's just staring daggers at me. And as soon as we finish, he walks over and he goes, "Why are you wearing a Shenmue shirt?" And I tell him, like, oh, we're promoting the re-release, and we're very excited about Shenmue 3 coming up. And he goes, 3? There was a 2? And I was like, yeah, there was a 2. And he just went, oh, that game. And I was just like, this sounds like it's going to be good. And he just went off. He was like, yeah, I worked at Sega at the time when that game was coming out, and we didn't understand that game at all. We had no idea what to do with it. We decided he was part of the marketing team. He's like, this game makes no sense. I don't get it. He's got like this girlfriend. I guess his girlfriend's hot. Let's make the trailer about her. And I'm like, see, even all the way back then, at the very inception, they had no idea how to present that game to people. This dude told me this to my face, and I was just like, wow. So, yeah.
You know that Dreamcast magazine demo disc where it has Shenmue on it?
Mm-hmm.
And you watch the trailer on that demo disc, and the guy's like, is this even a game?
That sounds vaguely familiar.
And you're like... Yeah, you're like, I hope so. I like games for my Dreamcast. Yeah, like they didn't know how to market it at all.
Yeah, they really didn't.
Is it a game? Yeah.
So that's that.
No, I love that story, though. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
And, speaking of Shenmue 3, and you've been very instrumental in covering a lot of Shenmue 3 and giving your thoughts on the demo and meeting with Yu Suzuki. But from the start, as soon as Shenmue 3 was announced, well, the Kickstarter at least, the Kickstarter campaign was announced, it was immediately received with a lot of suspicion once the hype died down. I feel like this project, this game, has been mired in controversy the entire time. I remember watching an IGN video where there was a guy, one of the editors was saying, why is Sony letting Yu Suzuki do a Kickstarter if Sony's partnered to make the game? And they just had this misinformation right away, and they're trying to put a negative spin on it like immediately.
Yeah.
And it's just controversy after controversy. There's been problems with, from something as little as, do we offer Kickstarter rewards to Slacker backers? And then it has this big blow up, and it's a controversy for a while, and then it dies down. And then something else shows up, and it dies down. I kind of want to hear your thoughts on, why do you think that the PR for Shenmue 3 has been so negative?
I can only hazard a guess, just like anybody else, because
Sure.
Again, I don't work with them or anything. But if
Speculate
if
away.
I had to speculate on this entirely, first of all, people don't really like Kickstarter games in general. The difference between Shenmue 3 and all the games of that era, like Mighty Number 9 and Bloodstained and so on, is the gaming community understood that Bloodstained was going to be basically a sequel to Castlevania, but we couldn't have that because Konami wouldn't let him have the IP. Mighty Number 9 was going to be a sequel to Mega Man, but Capcom would not let him have the IP. The difference...
Oh, that was a real heartbreaker, too.
Well, the difference here, though, is that Shenmue 3 didn't have to be called Cave Escaper Man. It got to be Shenmue. It got to be the franchise name. It got to be this big thing. So automatically it has baggage attached to it. Sega allowed this to occur. And then Sony was cool enough to let them have the stage and help be involved and all that stuff. But that's the surface level information. Is to the average Joe who's even heard of Shenmue but never played it, I kind of remember that being a big game. Sony's got a bunch of money. Why are they asking us for money? It doesn't come off like an indie project. It comes off like the third in a big budget series, but rather than somebody backing it, you're asking me to. And that little pocket of information, I feel, is like what led to the initial controversy. It's as opposed to the truth, which we know now. Sony was really just helping with some at the time it was publishing, some marketing, which they're still on board for, and of course PS4 exclusivity was the trade, which is why you still get people complaining about where's the Xbox One version, which is not going to happen unless the game is super successful, and then maybe you'll see it in a year after whatever Sony deal they have times out.
That'd be my guess.
Yeah, that's a possibility, but that will only occur if the game is successful. If it bombs, they won't bother. So that's part one of that. And we kind of keep getting the same thing. And usually just has to do with the fact that the majority of people, I think, that talk about this have at best surface level knowledge of the situation, and they just talk about it. Because again, like I said, on the surface, it sounds like that argument would hold water. But it typically doesn't once you know the actual facts of the situation. But people don't typically get that information or don't care to. Yeah, and if we fast forward to the modern stuff, everybody's upset about the Epic deal and all that stuff. The truth is, none of you, myself included, know the details behind that deal and what happened. For all we know, what we do know now is they have that deal in place, and we also got a ton of the the Kickstarter stretch goals fulfilled. You can read between the lines and go, well, they probably funded that, so there's probably a deal there. And let's say that's not the case. Let's say they had some other investor we don't know about. They might have funded it, and maybe the Epic deal led to Shenmue 4. We don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows.
We don't know, but the former's more likely, I would think. Epic offered financial incentives, and so it became an Epic exclusive. That's where the money goes. Like you said, follow the money trail.
Always follow the money. But my point is, all of this stuff is surface level stuff where people just hear, okay, it's going to be an Epic Store exclusive, so I'm angry because I don't like Epic. That's fine, and you're right to be upset about that. But you have to do that second analysis of, okay, follow the money. Why would they have done that? And then you get more information. And I feel like that's just a common thing that happens with Shenmue stuff, is that the PR team in place either is incapable of clearly expressing the truth and why, and the way to calm people down, or there are certain factors they simply cannot say. The truth is, none of us know.
I guess that's a good point. They're certainly not faring well in the information war, or at least the misinformation war that's raging around the internet, swirling around this game. And the ironic thing about it is I feel like the Epic Games deal on paper makes sense as a smart business decision. Because if you think about it, you're working with Epic because Shenmue 3 is on Unreal Engine 4, right? And if you're leasing out an engine to Epic, you pay for the lease.
Yep.
So you have these fees you pay to Epic, and then Epic says, "Hey guys, if you make us exclusive for 1 year, we'll waive the licensing fees for Unreal Engine 4."
To be fair,
that's
to that,
huge. That helps so much.
Agreed, but to be fair to that point, they did that back in like 2015, and Epic Game Store didn't exist at the time. But did they? But what we do know is there is a relationship there. I mean, they openly admitted to it in one of those the Kickstarter updates, like not this past one, but I think the one before, because you just kind of read between the lines. You're like, we've had a relationship with them about working on their engine, and at the same time they were willing to be involved. So point is, we just don't have all the information. But we jump based on the information we have. And again, there's probably things that if it was public, that would probably help calm the storm. But there's also things they probably simply can't tell us. Like, this is pure speculation. I can't stress this enough. But let's say, for example, the Epic Game Store somehow secured funding for Shenmue 4. Again, pure speculation. This is not a thing. But let's say that was the case. They can't come out and tell you that's why they did it, because then that will hurt, ironically, sales of Shenmue 3. And the reason it would hurt sales of Shenmue 3 is because now there isn't this pressing need to get Shenmue 3 to be successful, because we're already guaranteed to have a fourth. So the pressure isn't there, and maybe we'll wait till 4 is out, that way we get like some big bundle deal. That hurts them, and then ironically does end up hurting Shenmue 4 if it were ever to be a thing. This is the kind of stuff that I've learned as you said, the industry inside stuff. They can't tell you everything because it just hurts stuff too much. Now, in this case, I don't know. I don't actually have any facts on this matter. Like, I don't know the details of the Epic situation. All we can assume, the best assumption is that Epic's involvement is probably what gave us all the Kickstarter stretch goals backed. And that makes the game ultimately better, which is a good thing. It's unfortunate that it has to have a year of exclusivity, but look at it that way. It's a year of exclusivity, and your Steam key is still coming and would even be honored if you're willing to wait for it. It could have been worse. Yeah. It could have been a lot worse.
Could have been.
It could have been it's a permanent Epic exclusive, and we're canceling the PS4 version. Like, can you imagine how much worse that would have been?
Oh.
So, like, at the end of the day, it sucks for people who are PC gamers who adamantly hate Epic, but at the end of the day, that's pretty much the only victims, because even then, you can have your refund if you want it, or you can get it on Steam in a year.
See, I just don't think it makes sense for people to be as upset as they are. I feel like they're super overreacting about something that's not that big of a deal. It's very melodramatic. It's very diva-like. It's like this almost like corporate politics sort of a deal. So, like, I don't like Epic, so I'm going to sabotage this game to get back at Epic, and it's like, and then they pretend to be on the side of the fans.
Unfortunately,
but if they,
sorry, go on. Go ahead.
All I was going to say is, if they really cared about the fans, they would help the fans get more Shenmue games. That's what we really want. We don't want to jab at Epic. We want more Shenmue. Why are you killing our Shenmue just to make a point about Epic? But
yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that perspective, and I never will, because I'm not a PC gamer, and I'm never going to be. But the argument I've seen a million times is just the distrust of Epic in multiple ways, which is they don't like the software because it's new and it's out of date. It doesn't have the kind of features of Steam, which that will change. They have a ton of money behind them. They know what they're doing. You will get a better launcher. Second is security issues. They're like, it was hacked once, blah, blah, blah. Steam has had multiple security issues over the years. It's just that they were a while ago. And Epic is more recent, which is kind of funny, by the way, because I'll always see arguments from people being like, I'm going to pirate it instead. And my response is, yeah, because torrents are so well known for their security. So great. Yeah, that's a good idea. It's to me,
that just destroys that whole argument. It really does.
So to me, it's, again, I am not a PC gamer, so I'm sure anybody who has legitimate criticisms of Epic, they're there. I understand that. I can't get inside that mindset though, because of reasons I've stated, because I'm not one, and every time I hear one of these bigger arguments, there is a response to it. And at the end of the day, you got to follow the money, as I keep saying. Steam, I'm sure, offered absolutely nothing in incentive to the Shenmue 3 development, where obviously Epic did. And ultimately, the game can be sold for cheaper on Epic while still producing more content than it could on Steam. So it is ultimately, at least in the short run, theoretically anyway, a better move for the game. It is definitely a better move if that funding went to make the game bigger. That's indisputable.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
making it the best game it can be.
Yeah, so, but I can understand why they're upset about the distribution system. But even if you get all the way down to that point, you're going to have it in a year. And the other thing is, I think the other part of this is that I think PC gamers are not used to this, which is console gamers, we're used to having our base split. You know, it's like, I got to have an Xbox One, a PS4, or a Switch. That way I can have all the games on different things.
Oh man, you want to talk about a switcheroo here. When you're playing Shenmue 1 on the Dreamcast in America and you're waiting on Shenmue 2 to come out on the Dreamcast, and then yoink, they pull the rug out and put it on an Xbox.
Yeah,
and then you go out and you buy an Xbox to play Shenmue 2.
Yep.
That's a console gamer's perspective.
Yeah.
We're super used to this.
Yeah, so, but I think PC gamers are not, because they're used to having everything be in-house and be on one convenient thing. And I think that Epic is truly upsetting them, because it's getting to the point where Steam used to be this one, essentially a platform. Even though it's not a platform, your PC is the platform. The Steam is just a launcher, but they think of it as a platform where it hosts all of their games. And it's getting annoying, because you start seeing like EA has their own launcher, Ubisoft has their own launcher. And now, I mean, that was just like, okay, I don't want to play Ubisoft's games, so I won't care about theirs. I don't want to play EA's games, so I don't care about theirs. Epic is a legitimate threat, because it's taking actual like exclusive content away from Steam permanently from a wide variety of companies. And so to them, it's now starting to be like, I hate this exclusives stuff, because I have to get this launcher for this game, this launcher for that game, this launcher for that game. And I can see why that's irritating. But man, that is small potatoes compared to what PC or console gamers have been having to do. Like, I'm sorry, guys. Welcome to Economics 101. Exclusives drive sales. They drive incentive. It has always worked like that since the dawn of time in video game console history. PC gamers, welcome to 1978. This is how it's worked since then. I'm sorry, but get over it. You know, like, you don't even have that bad of a deal. First of all, again, the game will be much better because of this, and you still get it on your platform of choice. All you have to do is wait a year, and if that's unacceptable to you, you can get a refund right away. You do not have a bad deal compared to, as you just pointed out, I got a Dreamcast, and I wanted the second one. Well, now I have to go buy a $300 Xbox to do it. You have to install different software, dude. That's it.
For free. Yeah.
Now, I again, there are going to be other legitimate criticisms of Epic that I am not going to wrap my head around, because I don't have that perspective. But from an outsider's perspective, that's my interpretation of the situation.
Well, and hence my diva analogy. It's really making a mountain out of a molehill, you know, in the big scheme of things. I mean, like, talk about first world problems here. But I think that, what if I put it to you like this? Cancel culture. It feels like people want Shenmue 3 to fail, and as I said before, they're acting like they're on the side of fans, but what they really do is they get a kick out of sticking it to certain corporations that they decide not to like for whatever political or economic reason. You know, I think of things like, and I'm not a fan of this movie, but like the Ghostbusters movie that was a female reboot,
the 2016
or whatever.
One, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't really care about that movie one way or the other. I don't have a dog in that fight. But it was more like, yeah, we made that fail. Good, we canceled it. # cancel culture, you know? And I feel like Shenmue is just the next thing in their crosshairs.
Well, it's unfortunate you would compare that terrible movie to Shenmue 3, but yes.
That's not what I mean.
I know. It's just
I
kind
get
of
what you're
funny.
saying. It wasn't the most eloquent.
I know. I get what you're saying. First, I've never heard of that hashtag before. Now, I can't argue with.
I might have made it up.
That's fine. I can't argue with someone who has a principled issue against Epic. Really, like, if you find it somehow morally corrupt or whatever, that's how you feel. I can only try to understand that to my best ability, and in my estimation, it doesn't hold water for reasons we've already explained about I'm sorry, but exclusivity is a thing that has always been in video games. You're just not used to it. But the console gamers have been used to it for 40 years. Now, maybe that's the principled argument, is that PC should be above that type of thing. But I can't make that case. All I can, like I said, sit here from the sidelines as a console gamer looking at that fire that's happening over there and go, they need to put that out.
I'm just going to come out on record and say it. I think it's about negativity. Negativity creates clicks. People want attention. They're going to use Shenmue to elevate their own platforms by putting a negative spin on it and getting attention for the failure of something. They love it when something fails. They want to turn it into another Mighty Number 9. That'd be a more apt comparison. They love it when you start off as the good guy and then everybody turns on it and it crashes and burns, and then you get to cover it and get some clicks for that day.
So
and I think that's really where
that was that scene in Spider-Man 1 where Green Goblin's telling Spider-Man, like, no matter how much of a hero you are, one day they will hate you and they will celebrate your failure. And that's like a weird flaw in humanity, I guess. But there is an argument to be made there. But in the case of... I feel like Shenmue 3 wouldn't be having such a hard time if it weren't for the already built-in hate of Epic. But at the same time, I look at even the most recent one about DLC and season passes and stuff like that.
I was going to come to that next. Good.
Do you want to just talk about that? Because I have to admit, I am not super informed on this particular situation because I was flying and I landed and I had a ton of people tweeting at me about this and I really haven't had a chance to even look into it much.
Do you want me to give you the quick and dirty?
Please do.
It's basically just there's like season pass DLC type things that you can get for pre-ordering Shenmue 3, like I think it's something like some costumes and some move scrolls and things like that for the season pass, and those are not going to be automatically given to Kickstarter backers for free. Kickstarter backers will receive their Kickstarter backer rewards. Slacker backers will receive their respective Slacker backer rewards, and people who pre-order for the season pass will get the season pass rewards, and they're all 3 different things. And people are making a big hullabaloo about that and acting like they're on the side of fans by saying, hey fans, you're entitled, you should be able to get these pre-order bonus things because you kickstarted the game. Aren't you mad? You should be mad because then my video will get clicks. That's kind of what's happening. That's my spin on it, I guess, at the end there. But essentially that's what it's about. There's a season pass. It's got some DLC type stuff, and Kickstarter backers won't get it for free. If they want that, they have to buy the season pass.
Well, okay, so obviously, like I said, I'm new to this story. I haven't had much of a chance to digest it, but based on what you're saying, that's... I can't say I'm particularly surprised. First of all, the DLC is non-essential. Secondly, this is a revenue stream that they need because Kickstarter backers have already purchased the game. So this is the theoretical way of having them buy the game again. But without actually buying the game, I guess you could just buy the DLC. Also, if you spent $30 or even $60, that wouldn't cover you were you to buy it, the Season Pass Deluxe Edition or whatever. This to me sounds like all to do about nothing, because especially the Kickstarter never promised DLC for free, and I think there is some DLC that is exclusive to the Kickstarter version there is a bunch of stuff in the Kickstarter editions that the public will not have. This to me sounds like give me more than what you said you would give me, which ironically Epic gave you, by the way. They gave you more of a game than you would have had.
Exactly.
But, okay. I don't know. This is not something I feel like I can get pissed off about.
No. The only thing I'm pissed off at are all the entitled divas that keep making a big deal about this and creating more negative narrative surrounding Shenmue 3 and making people think that it's the bad guy that you want to take down for their cancel culture. It's very frustrating to me, because if they really had the best interests of the fans in mind, they would help us have more Shenmue. That's all we really want. What, you want a refund? That's what you really want out of this whole thing? No, you want a good game.
Yeah. Yeah, the unfortunate problem with public funding like that is I'm not going to say sense of entitlement, because that feels wrong, but the sense of like, you owe me a constant stream of updates, when again, most people can never really understand how the video game industry truly works. Like, you all want the sausage, but you don't want to see how it's made. If you see how the gaming industry really works, it's not meant for everybody's eyes. And the problem when you're an investor, like a Kickstarter backer, you feel like you're supposed to know all that stuff, but you really can't for $30. Like, it's not it's not worth anybody's time, like, to try and coach. I don't know how to explain it, and I know it makes me come off like a jerk. But
no, not at all. I think it makes a lot of sense.
But the problem is, like, once you get into the factory and see how the sausage is made, you kind of wish you were never there. Let me put it that way. Like, I kind of miss blissful ignorance.
But the magic is taken away.
It's very spoiled. But
I got you.
Yeah, let me. I don't know, man. I just can't be upset about non-essential DLC that in any other situation you would have had to have bought separately anyway. This is, to me, comes off as, like, again, I'm not going to say ignorance, but it comes off like, and not even entitlement. It just kind of comes off like people thinking they were owed this because of a fuzzy memory of maybe it said something like that 4 years ago. They're spinning it like, hey, Kickstarter backers were going to have this, and now they're not. But that was never the case to begin with. I don't know why you're expecting more than you were promised, which is, I now have to, I can't believe I have to sit here and defend Epic, because that's truly going to get me in trouble. But they are the guys that gave you more for nothing. You want a cause like that? They're actually your heroes here without you realizing it. They gave you a ton of content. They gave you infinitely more than some. Let's put it this way: the DLC is going to be non-essential stuff, some scrolls, some clothes. You're upset about that. Meanwhile, Epic gives you basically twice as big of a game for free. You don't have to do anything, and you also are upset with them. What do you want? Where is the victory for you? That's what I'm asking the audience. I just, and I know it makes me sound like a jerk because I'm trying to explain it as logically as I think I can, which is you get infinitely more content for free from Epic, the guys you hate, than some superficial DLC that you don't have to pay for, that you aren't getting for free because you didn't pay for it in the first place. And I say this as someone who put down a shit ton of money on that Kickstarter. Like, I put down a stupid amount of money that I should not do. But does any part of me think, like, well, I'm entitled to the DLC? No. I don't feel that way.
Look, I was working a minimum wage job at a gas station, and I scraped together $310 and donated it. And my wife made me sleep on the couch for a month after that. Are you kidding me? It's really silly. And I know you don't have much of a perspective on this, but let's be real here. Valve and Steam, like Steam from Valve is just as much of an evil, quote-unquote, corporation as Epic is. It's just competition in the end game. It's silly to have this blind loyalty to one specific corporate entity or the other, like it's a football team or something. It's just, it makes no sense.
That's just console
it's very
wars.
Disappointing.
That's all that is. Like,
it's tribalism.
Yeah, I mean, that's old as human nature, but like that goes back to like the early 90s, like Sega versus Nintendo. Like, that argument is always there. Epic versus Steam is just the latest one. Shenmue 3 had the unfortunate, it's the kickball in between the battle right now. Like, that's what it is. And people are arguing against it on that basis. But if you, like I said, that's the easy argument, is Shenmue 3 is like now exclusive to the bad guys. That's the surface level argument that everyone gets upset about. But then when you go and see how the sausage is made, you realize, like, oh, well, okay, Epic actually put down a lot of effort to make the game a lot bigger, a lot better, provided more content and all that stuff. And in the end, we'll still offer you a refund if you want it, and we'll give you the Steam version in a year if you want it. Whereas Steam put down nothing and would have offered you. Here's the reverse history here, by the way. Let's just pretend for a second the Epic thing never happened. You have half of a game that comes out on Steam. Are you actually happier with that? You have half of a game compared to what you're going to have. But no, good on you. You got it a year earlier. Awesome.
Yeah, that's so stupid. No, I don't want a half-baked game just so I can have it on Steam. I want a full, polished, good experience, a good quality game, and I don't care where I have to go to play it.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is you do have a point about the negativity, because everything that's like slightly negative gets blown up. When they get a ton of credit, when they do something really good like that, like, oh, we're going to honor all the stretch goals out of our own pockets, crickets. Like, nobody's in there. I mean, the Shenmue fans, let's not misunderstand. Shenmue fans, like the hardcorest of Shenmue fans, are on top of this. They recognize the positivity, they get out there and they talk about it, and we all organize and we communicate that in the best way we can. Now, there's Shenmue fans who misunderstand a lot of the time, and they get upset, and then often they're very reasonable. Once it's explained to them, they're like, oh, okay, we're good. But there's those other people, as you've pointed out, a lot of people who make videos about clicks that are not fans to begin with. They're just trying to describe a news situation for views. And I hate that, because I am a YouTuber as well, and they make me disgusted by my own job. But
yeah. And they can't even pronounce the name of the game correctly. They come up, oh, Shenmue is back at it again, guys.
Yes.
Like they know the game. They're not part of it.
Yeah, so I empathize, you know. I mean, like, it's a frustrating as hell situation to do or to deal with. And so all you can really do is just get out there and keep spreading the truth about how it works, and just try to constantly put the spin on it that's positive with the truth, which is, again, you know, you don't like Epic. I get it. You hate Epic, but they made the game better. They've doubled the amount of content in it. That's insane, and they get no credit for it. But
I totally appreciate them. I love them for that, to be
yes.
honest. I gave no F's about Epic whatsoever at the beginning, and then when I found out, hey, they paid for stretch goals, I was like, thanks, Epic. I love you.
Yeah, so
thanks for doing that.
That's the kind of messaging you need to get off to fans, is to tell them that side of things, because all they're hearing is the negative side of stuff, which is, to be honest, small potatoes. Well, like, as you said, first world problems. When the worst problem you have here is you have to wait a year for a Steam key, or you get a free refund. By the way, the refund comes from Epic themselves. They are putting up the money. They're the ones issuing the refunds.
Some people say that Epic is trying to, I don't know, it's kind of disingenuous because, oh, thanks for solving the problem you created, Epic. But really, I do think there's merit to the argument you're making, because it wasn't really that big of a deal. People did overreact. They had a super crazy, knee-jerk emotional reaction, and Epic still went out of their way to smooth it over, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I know that people are still unsatisfied with that result, and I know that based on my own YouTube videos and people commenting, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of hate in this video on me in particular, because whatever, I get it, you don't like Epic, but you have to understand they made the game better, and eventually, if you want to play it on Steam, it will be a better game because of them. Not in spite of them, but because of them. I can promise you Steam offered nothing to the production of this game and actually takes a bigger cut from it. It's...
Yeah. Mods, I guess. You can do mods.
People like things to be a certain way. They want things to function a certain way. They're familiar with Steam. They like it. Again, they want to eat the sausage. They don't want to see how it's made.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to kind of leave it there. I think we've really covered this topic pretty exhaustively, but I did want to say one thing. My little brother, he was a Steam backer, and when he found out that Epic Store was going to exclusively distribute Shenmue 3 afterwards, his first reaction was, they lied to me. And then he thought about it and he went, it's just one installer. And I think that if you want to be upset at Epic, that's okay, that's your prerogative. But to all the big YouTubers out there, don't act. Here's my problem. I don't have a problem with people being upset over the Epic thing. Here's how I'm upset. I'm upset that big YouTubers pretend like they have the best interests of the Shenmue fans in mind, when really they only are motivated by their own self-interest to get clicks, and they're just trying to kill a game that we've waited for decades, literally decades, to see come to fruition. So that's where I stand on that
my
one.
My only point of contention with that statement is the motivation to kill something, because to motivate to kill something, you have to understand it. I think it doesn't come from either. I think there's a neutrality of, like, this is a story that I know will get some attention. I'm going to talk about it. Negativity sells, but they don't understand. Oh, I'm trying to help fans because they don't like Epic, and they should get the free DLC because Kickstarter. Like, they think they're doing the best. The problem is, if they had actually dug into it, they'd realize how detrimental that is to the community. But that's not well, I should say that is their job. That's not what they've chosen to do. But they're not going out of their way to hurt the community. I think that they believe to be the good guy in the situation. They're just, frankly,
but if they're hurting
misinformed.
if they're hurting us through incompetence, just here's what I mean: stop helping, because you're not. That's what I'm saying.
It's an interesting way of putting it.
But Yeah. But I appreciate your point of view there, Adam, and I thank you for counterbalancing some of my statements. It gave me something to think about there. Now, I'd like to transition, if I may, towards something very near and dear to my heart, which is the significance of Virtua Fighter in the Shenmue series.
Sure.
So when I was a kid, I asked my dad if he would buy me a PlayStation, a Sony PlayStation. And he went, yeah, okay. And then he went out and he was like, I'm not going to buy him one of those. It's way too expensive. But he went to a garage sale where he found a used Sega Saturn, which probably should have been more expensive at the time, I think, because it was in the mid-90s. But he got it for way cheap. He just got it off of some guy for like $20 or something. So he gives me this Sega Saturn and he goes, here's your PlayStation. And I'm like, what in the heck? Okay. Oh, Sega. Oh, yeah, I like Sonic. Okay, sure. And at first when I was playing it, I thought, why aren't these graphics very good? They look worse than the N64. They look worse than the PlayStation, right? But then I put in Virtua Fighter 2, and my mind just went, it looked so amazing. And ever since then, I've been a super diehard Virtua Fighter fan. And it really has added to my enjoyment of Shenmue to be a Virtua Fighter fan, because as you know, Shenmue started off as the Virtua Fighter RPG, The Legend of Akira.
Yep.
Sure.
Do you want to elaborate on that story for anybody who's unfamiliar?
Sure. So I actually made a video about this. It's called Shenmue the Virtua Fighter RPG. And basically, Yu Suzuki is a lot like Sega's Shigeru Miyamoto. He had a lot of arcade hits such as Hang On, Afterburner,
Outrun,
Space Harrier.
Yeah. Dude, yeah, he was Sega's
Power Drift.
Shigeru Miyamoto. The dude could do no wrong.
Absolutely not. And then they said, hey, here's Street Fighter 2. Can you make a fighting game to beat Street Fighter 2? And he went, okay, Virtua Fighter. Bam, it took over arcades like crazy. Mm-hmm. Well, then they had, the Sega Saturn was really worried about the Sony PlayStation, and they had these RPGs coming out, and then they found out, oh no, Final Fantasy VII. We've got to have an RPG that can beat Final Fantasy VII. Well, what they had in the works to have a really good AAA RPG was Panzer Dragoon Saga, and also Virtua Fighter RPG. And they got pretty far into it, but they eventually shifted it from Virtua Fighter RPG to Project Berkeley to be on the Sega Dreamcast, and eventually it took on its own identity and became Shenmue later. And so protagonist Ryo Hazuki ceased to be Akira Yuki from Virtua Fighter, although many of his characteristics are similar.
Yeah.
So
hit the nail on the head.
Anything you want to add to that?
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, great. So my argument is that a love of the Virtua Fighter series and appreciation of it is actually beneficial to the enjoyment of Shenmue. It deepens it. And I remember I was watching one of your videos once a while ago, Adam, and you were talking about how, hey, I'm not really into Virtua Fighter. It's not my thing. I respect it. I appreciate that it has significance to Shenmue's creation, and I love that about Shenmue, but I'm more of a Dead or Alive guy.
That would be a correct assessment, yes.
Yeah. So as a Dead or Alive guy, are you aware of Virtua Fighter's significance to Dead or Alive?
I know that at least some of the characters appeared in Dead or Alive 5, like Akira was in there, Sarah was in there.
Yeah.
Was Jackie in there?
Jackie was, yes, that's correct.
That was about it. I'm sure the two paralleled each other throughout the mid-90s and onward, but beyond that, no.
Well, sure. Yeah, because, the guy who created Dead or Alive, Tomonobu Itagaki, he saw Virtua Fighter and he just went, oh, this is it. He borrowed, in Virtua Fighter, you've got guard, punch, kick. In Dead or Alive, you have the same thing. Whereas as opposed to Tekken, where you have left punch, left kick, right? Like
sure.
It's a little bit different. As far as the whole rock, paper, scissors, punch, kick, guard, and then countering, Dead or Alive more closely resembles Virtua Fighter. It's almost, in a way, it's almost like a spiritual spin or takeoff or a successor to Virtua Fighter in some ways, which is why it paid homage to the Virtua Fighters in Dead or Alive 5 Last Round. And it was kind of funny because Itagaki said, Virtua Fighter is like a fancy restaurant with classical music. And Dead or Alive is like one of those sushi bars where the girls are in bikinis. Like, still quality food, but one's got a classy atmosphere and one's just a lot more fun. Is kind of a deal.
I get what you're saying.
If you can get into Dead or Alive, the fundamentals of Dead or Alive are very, very similar to Virtua Fighter. So I'm trying to sell you on this.
I get
I'm
what
trying
you're
to give
doing,
you the hard sell here. Yeah, man. And then you can see how Virtua Fighter's fingerprints are all over Shenmue. You've got the capsule toys, the posters, conspicuously plastered everywhere of Virtua Fighter. Have you noticed, maybe you didn't notice this, but are you aware of how many of Ryo Hazuki's moves and his opponent's moves are ripped straight from the Virtua Fighter games?
Yeah, they used the Virtua Fighter engine. I mean, they did visuals too. Like Ryo is based on Akira, so he has like the same cut on his face. Landi, I believe, was based on one of those characters who has like a green jacket in, I forget his name. I'm sure you remember.
Lao Chan
in Virtua Fighter too. Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Like the characters are largely based on that, and then they just kind of evolved them into their own IP characters. So, like I said, I respect what it did. It launched Shenmue and gave it like a grounding, a foundation. The actual gameplay of Virtua Fighter, I would have to really kind of revisit the series to possibly appreciate it, because every time I ever played it, it was just a little too, I don't know, I don't want to say slow, because that's not really a fair way of putting it.
Some people say
especially for a
slow
Shenmue fan.
or stiff. You can't button mash. It's not button masher friendly.
Yeah.
It has a steep learning curve. But like
Yeah.
Shenmue, you get out of it what you put into it. And I think you would really find a lot of enjoyment in getting into some of... I actually make Virtua Fighter lore videos, and if you get into some of the lore, however vague it is, in Virtua Fighter, and you learn about the martial arts styles of the characters, when you go over to Shenmue, like, let me give you an example. Let's talk Lao Chan and Landi. Lao Chan uses the fighting style Koen Ken, which is the Tiger Swallow Fist, and Koen Ken is actually a real-world legendary fighting style. There are ancient manuscripts that say, okay, here's the most feared kung fu style out there, Koen Ken. But the style has actually been lost, but it did exist at one time, although it may have become mythic and overblown over the centuries. But if somebody was a master of Koen Ken, everybody was scared of that guy in ancient China, right? And
Sure.
and the whole idea is that Lao Chan, who is a cook, by the way, miraculously somehow this master of Koen Ken, which is a long dead martial arts style, just shows up. That shouldn't happen. It's been gone for hundreds, maybe like 1,000 years, right? And so when you go into Shenmue and Ryo's talking to Ajiichi, the owner of the Ajiichi restaurant, and he's like, hey Ryo, the three blades.
Yeah.
There's a baker and the barber and the cook, and we were imperial bodyguards for the emperor and stuff like that. Well, you find out later on too that Ryo finds a scroll in his dojo, and he takes it to Guizan, and Guizan says, oh, hey, look, there's a tiger on here. It says, great tiger, rush up Moon Mountain, and he's like, this is secret poetry. It's a martial arts move written in poetry. And so martial arts masters would hide their martial arts styles through poetry. And the reason they did that was because it actually turns out Koen Ken, the reason it disappeared was because an emperor feared it so much that he made its practice outlawed. And anybody who practiced or mastered it or disseminated was executed, taken out. That's how it disappeared. So how did Lao Chan figure out Koen Ken? Well, one of his hobbies in Virtua Fighter is Chinese poetry. So it turns out, as a cook, he's one of the three blades. This is kind of my theory here, but as a cook, it makes him one of the three blades, which would give him access to these martial arts that guarded the emperor. And as the members of the three blades would have hunted down practitioners of Koen Ken, gotten these martial arts scrolls, Lao finds them. It really makes you realize, wow, Landi showing up and killing Iwao with a mysterious martial arts style, which is Koen Ken, really deepens the world of Shenmue, and you would never get that if you didn't know about Lao Chan. And when you put them together, it really fleshes out the universe a little bit more. So, sorry for rambling like that, but...
No, I gotta say that was fascinating.
Yes, it really is. It really is. So, I mean, if you want to know more about that kind of stuff, guys, you can check out over on the Virtua Bros channel. I've got Lao Chan Virtua Fighter lore. I go into it over there. But I really, guys, if you're a fan of Virtua Fighter, please get into Shenmue. And if you're a fan of Shenmue, please get into Virtua Fighter because they go together so well. And they really are a fascinating combination.
It does make sense. Like I said, like the Virtua Fighter RPG became Shenmue. The foundation is there. And a lot of people, I've heard that before. A lot of people say like a lot of the secrets of what's supposed to happen in Shenmue might kind of be revealed when you go back and play old Virtua Fighter games and study them, because like you said, there's all these connections, and it's not the first time I've heard that, though. That was a very specific storyline. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And actually Switch from PhantomRiverstone.com, who you may be familiar with.
I've met him. He's a good dude.
Yeah, he's really cool. I've talked to him online a little bit. He actually discovered some Koen Ken storyline in the Shenmue 2 code. And so it talks about how Lan Di was mad at who's the guy that Ryo finds in Shenmue 2 who's like hiding in a library or something, and you got to like put the keys in the Buddha statue.
Yuan Dazu.
Yeah, Yuan Dazu. Something about Yuan Dazu having access to Koen Ken manuscripts and trying to keep them away from Lan Di. Like that's in there. So this is stuff that might be more fleshed out in Shenmue 3, and so it's super interesting. And you would never get that if you don't delve into the Virtua Fighter lore and the history. So I just highly recommend it, and I hope you get a chance to try it out. Virtua Fighter 2 and Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown are on the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, digitally, and on the Xbox One X, they are still backwards compatible. So that's where I play it.
I was actually going to ask, which one would you suggest I dive into?
Well, here's the deal, man. And look, just to show you how big of a Virtua Fighter fan I am here, you have a Sega Saturn, do you not?
Of course.
So check this out. Can you see this, Adam? I got Virtua Fighter 1 on Skype. Oh, you're probably looking at your audio, aren't you?
No, I'm looking at Skype, but there's nothing. I'm not seeing a video from you.
Oh, snap. Well, that's silly. Did I turn it off?
Oh, no, that's right. I'm using my phone.
So you just won't be able to see it?
All right. Wait, now I see you.
Oh, you do?
Hi.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Yeah.
So here we go. Virtua Fighter 1 for the Sega Saturn. Not a good frame rate.
The original version.
But
yeah, well, that's why it was remixed.
Remix right here.
Yep.
Pretty fun. Still not running at 60. If you have a Sega Saturn, you can't go wrong. It's a very, very good port. Virtua Fighter 2 here. Excellent port. Runs at 60 frames per second. Now, if you play it on the Xbox One X or 360 or the PS3, it's still really good. The graphics are better. There's better textures, and there's some stages that have more polygons and more effects that this version had to strip out. However, in the end credits, it'll show a little montage of your guy beating up all these fighters, and they'll fall down on the ground. And then it'll go to the next. So just every person you beat in the arcade mode will fall down. Well, in the port to the 360 and PS3, when they fall down on the ground, they sit there for like half a second, and then all their textures pop off, and they look like a hairy gorilla. It's really fun. It's really funny, but it takes you out of it. So in some ways, I still prefer this. So Virtua Fighter 2, can't go wrong with it. I'm going to come to your favorite console, Virtua Fighter 3 Team Battle.
Ah, of course.
You
skipped over the Genesis one. How could you do that?
We shall not speak its name. Although the 32X is really great. 32X is a super good version of that. I need to get that.
Joking.
So you're poking holes in how big of a Virtua Fighter fan I am because I don't have the Genesis or the 32X ones. Shoot, exposed. This one's really cool because people didn't like it as much at first because it's got like a fourth button. Instead of it's punch, kick, guard, and then evade, and the evade lets you sidestep into 3D. People didn't like how they messed with that. They were resistant to the change, but it's got really cool environmental physics and uneven backgrounds, and it has, unlike most Virtua Fighter games, it actually has like an ending cinematic when you beat the game. It's got a history mode where you can watch cutscenes on the history of Virtua Fighter. So this is a very underrated. It's not the most faithful port, but it's pretty decent. And it's a pretty underrated game. So since you have a Dreamcast, this is not a bad place for you to go. So Virtua Fighter 2 for Saturn, Virtua Fighter 3 for Dreamcast is good. Now, possibly arguably the best Virtua Fighter. Virtua Fighter 4 Final Tuned for the arcade is probably the absolute best Virtua Fighter game ever made. But as you know, Virtua Fighter 4 came out for the PlayStation 2. This isn't bad, but go ahead and pick up Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution. The NTSC version is really cool because it lets you play the game with Virtua Fighter 1 graphic skins.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's really cool. So you get characters who were not in Virtua Fighter 1 that are rendered in Virtua Fighter 1 graphics, like Go here and Brad Burns. And so this is a really good one to go with. Now, if you want to know modern consoles, Virtua Fighter 5 does exist physically. Virtua Fighter 5 Online. This is arcade version B. Arcade version A was on the PlayStation 3, so this is a little bit more updated, I guess you could say. But people argue about what's better, A or B. But then you have Final Showdown on the 360 and PS3, and I would say go with Final Showdown over VF5 Online because it has additional characters. It has 2 additional characters over this game. So it depends on what you want to play on, Adam. If you want to play on modern consoles like your Xbox One X, I would just go ahead and pick up both Virtua Fighter 2 on there. It's a good port, and Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown.
Well, I have no problem using my Saturn. That's nothing.
Hey, go to your Saturn and use your PS2, use your Dreamcast. Those are all great versions there. So a few tips there for you to get into some Virtua Fighter.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Now, I think that we've gone a little bit over time here, Adam, but I've had a really good time talking with you, and I want to kind of send it off on a lighter note here and have some fun playing a game. This is a game that I call Back of the Box. And what I have here are 10 Dreamcast games, okay?
Okay.
And I want you to pick a number 1 through 10. And what I will do is I will read the back of the box of one of these Dreamcast games. Of course, if it has the name of the main character of the game, or any character of the game, or the game's name on the back of the box, I'll skip over that. But based on the reading of the back of the box, you have to tell me what the game is. And I'll give you 3 chances, all right?
Okay.
If you win, I'll send you a copy of Virtua Fighter 5 Online for the Xbox 360.
You don't have to do that. Thank you.
They're not expensive. Not to cheapen the gift. Or I could send you a Monster Energy drink. That was one of my favorite gifts you did at a convention.
Oh yeah, the convention.
Funny.
Yeah. Sometimes there's this old joke of like sometimes I will sign garbage and give that away. In that case, like the convention we were at was just giving out free Monster drinks, and I just wanted to give someone trivia. Yeah. And I was like, "I'll sign a Monster drink," and somebody they threw it away, but you should. You shouldn't keep that.
That's kind of funny. But so you get 3 chances. If you fail, then we have to be friends.
Okay.
All right. These are the stakes.
I might just fail on purpose.
Oh, good. Well, that's good to hear. So, all right, man. 1 through 10. Go ahead and pick your number.
Let's go with 3, 7, and 8.
Oh my. Okay, you're picking them right away. Let me write these down. 3. 7 and 8. Okay, here we go.
Yep.
1, 2, 3. Oh, you'll never get that one.
Okay.
4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, you're definitely gonna win. And here's 8. All right. Let me just turn my video off here just in case so you can't cheat.
Sure.
Okay, here we go. Back of the box. Developed with top race drivers. Praised for its functionality as a true racing simulator. And that's really about it.
That's all it says?
Yeah. Okay, well, there's a little bit more. Includes 6 of the world's top racetracks, including Monza, Long Beach, and Suzuka. Complete 2 arcade perfect conversion, plus Dreamcast enhanced features such as 2-player split screen, championship mode, and extra tracks.
Is that F355?
Dang. You got it, bro. Impressive.
What up?
Impressive. Okay, I'll be sending you that copy of Virtua Fighter 5 online.
We're not gonna continue.
No, we will continue just to see. But you already won. I thought this would be a lot harder. Okay, maybe I should up the stakes. You got to get 3 out of 3. Okay.
I already owned that game. Like you're good.
Oh, you do own it? Well,
yeah,
that just takes the wind out of it. I thought because you weren't a Virtua Fighter guy, you just wouldn't have it.
Nah, it's Sega stuff. I got it.
Okay, are you ready for number 7?
Let's do it.
The experience begins. A massive and highly detailed 3D world unlike anything ever seen.
Oh, Shenmue.
You got it. Okay, we got Shenmue, and then last one for back of the box. Two players are, well, okay, I can't say their names, but you got two players are about to experience a nightmare beyond their darkest imagination. While investigating the murder of a friend, these two venture into the mysterious Shadow Island and discover that it is home to untold malevolent adversaries. But the creatures of
Is this Alone in the Dark 4?
Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare?
Yeah,
Man,
Alone in the Dark 4.
3 out of 3, you got it. Adam Koralik,
you.
I doubted your Dreamcast knowledge, but I stand corrected. Well done. You have won back of the box. You're the reigning champion. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Take a victory lap.
I shall.
And, since that went a lot faster than I thought, here's something I wanted to do. I wanted to ask you, what are your favorite games for the Sega Dreamcast, which is your favorite console?
Shenmue 1 and 2, Power Stone 1 and 2, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, Jet Grind Radio, the unreleased Propeller Arena I thought was a lot of fun, Crazy Taxi 1 and 2, Soul Calibur. I always feel like that's a great place to start for most people.
That's good.
The Resident Evil games?
Yeah.
Those are good.
Definitely good choices. Well, I really love the Dreamcast. It was the first console I ever bought with my own money. But my favorite system would be the Sega Saturn. Do you have any favorite games for the Sega Saturn, which is my favorite console?
I don't have nearly as many fond memories of the Saturn. It's funny, I actually released a podcast today talking about that. But some of the ones that I find the most interesting, of course, the Panzer Dragoon games, Burning Rangers. If we were to dive into Nights into Dreams, of course. One of the ones that from the Japanese catalog I liked a lot was Radiant Silvergun, of course, the precursor to Ikaruga. And then just some, there's a lot of random Japanese ones. Like, there's this fighting game called Rabbit that EA made, but it only came out in Japan. That was a pretty cool 2D fighting game.
Oh, wow. Never heard of it.
Yeah, exactly. No one ever has. And I didn't know about it until I was over in Japan, and I was game hunting with a dude, and he was just like, yeah, you should get that game. He's like, EA made it. It's very English compatible, and it never came out in the States for some reason. And I was like, all right. So picked it up. Yeah, a lot of stuff like that. I don't know if I have as many immediate go-tos with the Saturn, just because I completely missed it as a child.
Yeah, well, I can understand that. It was purely by chance that I was even able to be exposed to it, much less play it. The one game I could never get for some reason, I'd see commercials everywhere for it, but no stores Walmart and stuff, they didn't carry any Saturn games at the time. So I'd see commercials for Nights into Dreams, and I couldn't buy it anywhere. So I had to wait till I was a grown man before I was able to play it. But I actually made some pickups this year. I do enjoy watching your pickup videos also from time to time. And I'd like you to kind of rate, kind of by your approval of my pickups for the year that I've made so far.
Okay.
So let me show you my pickups here. You mentioned the Panzer.
Wait, I have to go back to the camera.
Okay, back to the camera then. All right.
Back to the camera. All right.
Okay, so this year I picked up this guy. Now I think you feel favorably about Panzer Dragoon.
Yep.
Okay. Also, Zwei.
Yep.
The sequel.
Good choice.
I saved up.
How bad would that game be if it was called Panzer Dragoon Zwei, the sequel? It'd be really redundant.
I don't know. I'd be into that. that would be pretty funny. I saved up for a long time and kind of bit the bullet and picked up this one.
PDS.
Panzer Dragoon Saga. I got this year.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's one that a lot of people I don't think have played on the Saturn, possibly on the PlayStation. On the PlayStation, it's not as good of a port, I don't think. It's decent, but it's not as...
Dead or Alive?
No. Although Dead or Alive is one I still need to get. But Power Slave.
Oh, Power Slave, right on.
Yeah. Are you a fan of the Metroid Prime series at all?
Yeah, but it's been a long time since I played them.
This game is a first-person shooter, kind of like a Doom clone. But people keep calling it a Doom clone, but I feel like it's more of a proto-Metroid Prime in a lot of ways. Because you're in these Egyptian ruins, and you fight these demons and these bugs. It's actually kind of a lot like the Mummy movie with Brendan Fraser. It kind of reminds me of that. You've got a machine gun, and you're shooting up mummies and stuff. It's pretty cool. And you'll get to certain areas that are like you have locked doors, you can't access them, and then you'll find these sandals, and once you get the sandals you put them on and you can jump higher, and then more of the level is open to you and you have to backtrack and go through a labyrinth of these dungeons and stuff. So very similar to Metroid Prime, and so if you like Metroid Prime, I recommend picking it up. Power Slave.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's called that based on the really awesome Iron Maiden album. Here's one I'm really, really into right now. It's Magic Knight Ray Earth.
Right on.
Yeah, man.
Last North American Sega Saturn game.
The very last one. That's why I had to get it. And this is a weird game because it says T for teen, but in the game itself, it comes across as a very child-friendly anime sort of a deal. And they'll even have these, like when they do the tutorial, characters will pop up and sometimes it's voice acted and they'll say, "Hey there, kids, remember to save before you go over here," right? So it says T for teen, but they call you kids. And in the opening cutscene, there's a part where the main villain is told, "Oh, the three heroes are junior high school girls. They're like 14-year-old girls." And so the main villain says in a voice-acted cutscene, "Well, it's time for some child abuse." And I just dropped my controller. I couldn't even go on. Good stuff. And then, of course, if you like fighting games, X-Men Children of the Atom. Super amazing
that's a good
port.
one.
Way better than the PlayStation 1 port, have to say, in every way.
A lot of the fighting games were.
Yes, absolutely. So some of the pickups I made for that year, I thought it'd be kind of fun to flip the script.
You did
there.
well.
Thank you.
You did well.
Appreciate it.
One thing you're missing, and I have, and I'm going to make you jealous right now,
Okay.
is the long box version of Virtua Fighter Remix.
I do really want that. I was thinking about that.
So here's a little pro tip for you if you try to find that. It was a Canadian exclusive, so search Canadian outlets.
I noticed
More
on
likely to
eBay
find it
they were
there.
always Canadian sellers. That makes sense.
Yep, that's why.
Cool, good tip. I appreciate that, man. Well, hey,
Yeah, no problem.
We've gone way over time. I had a lot of fun talking to you. Is there anything else you would like to say before we wrap this up?
No, man, just thanks for having me on, and I'm sorry to everyone who was upset about Epic.
Yeah, I'm sorry to everyone who supports Shenmue 3 and has to go through all the negative drama for that as well.
Yeah, let's be very clear. The majority of fans are amazing people. They're great. And I think all of them, they can be reasoned with. I feel bad for the pseudo-fans who think they're doing us a favor by screaming and raging when, as you point out, most of them don't really have much information on the situation anyway.
That's definitely true. Well, Adam, thank you for all you do. I know you're a very humble guy, and you try to downplay your role in Shenmue and Sega, but it was because of you that I got into the 500K. So thank you for all you do to be a champion of the Shenmue games, and please keep it up and never give up.
Well, thank you very much. I don't deserve that, but thank you.
All right. All right. Well, with that, Friend Moves, we're going to end the podcast. Be safe and take care until we catch you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.